Hello, and welcome to Sobercast, where we provide AA speaker meetings and workshops in podcast format. We're an ad-free podcast, and if you enjoy listening, please help us be self-supporting by visiting Sobercast.com, look for the donate link, and drop $1 or $2 into our virtual basket. Anyway, we hope you enjoyed the podcast. Have a great day.
My name is David. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, David.
I'm really glad to be here. I somehow recovered from this hopeless place that I got myself to. I'm from Anchorage, Alaska. My home group is the Monday Night Men's Meeting, and my sponsor's Runar from Iceland. And this whole trip, I got my sobriety date's May 23rd, 2002. And I guess I can start with, I started drinking when I was about 14, and it was, at first it was, some beer, and I felt good, and I didn't get in any trouble, and then I drank some gin, and I remember something happened. I remember I felt this beautiful, beautiful way about life, and then I wanted to stay that way forever. And then I overshot it, and I got in a fight with my dad, and there was blood everywhere, and the police were there, and they decided that they were going to put me in the car, and I didn't want that, and then they put me in anyways. And I woke up the next morning in a youth facility, in the cell, and I wondered, how can I drink without winding up in jail, because it was beautiful. I mean, I loved to drink. I loved that way that it made me feel last night was like an answer that I'd wanted my whole life and never got. It talks about in the book and that I felt at ease, and I tried to find that again through alcohol, and it worked for a little while, and then I would get in trouble again. And within a real short time, I was in the center for a year because of drinking. And I got out, and I'd been sober for almost a year. And I thought that every alcoholic does, that after a little bit of time of sober, that you can learn again how to drink. And I had passed that line, and really quickly I was drinking more than I ever had. And I was becoming a practicing alcoholic. I did that for about 5 years, and when I was 20, I had become everything that I had never wanted to be. I became a person that I utterly loathed. I became just so low of a person that I'd swear I was going to change my life that day, and I would pick up a beer and I would drink it, and I would be dumbfounded why I was doing it, because I didn't understand. And I always used to say I would quit drinking when I wanted to, and then I desperately wanted to, and I couldn't. I couldn't do it. I had no control. I had no power over it, and I wanted to quit drinking, and I didn't know how, and so I thought that maybe trying to kill myself would solve that, because drinking wasn't working. And I had this huge pistol at my house, and I thought, maybe this is the way to get out, and I didn't have any ammo though. And then the next morning I'm playing with this gun and I'm pulling the trigger, and the next morning this kid comes into my house and he says, I got ammo for the gun. And I shrink so small, because I was afraid already of everything in the world, and my world had come to my basement, and I was uncomfortable to go anywhere already, and then I couldn't even live there anymore. And that was a good place for me to be at for an alcoholic, because I was at that jumping off place, and I knew I needed something more than what I had. And I shortly after that conceded to my innermost self that I was an alcoholic, that something was with my body different than other people, that when I put alcohol in my body, it did it differently, and I would develop these cravings, and I couldn't stop drinking more. And I already knew about my mind thing. I mean, it was obvious to me. So when I came to AA, and that was the first step, it was really easy to accept that. I knew I was an alcoholic. I went to one meeting, and a bunch of kids from a treatment center were there, and all I could do was cry the whole time as they bullshitted their way through the whole meeting and talked about all kinds of things that I knew that I wasn't there for. And after they were done bullshitting, and I was done crying, a guy came over to me and he said, just don't drink tonight and come back. There's a meeting tomorrow you can go to. And he gave me I got a schedule. And at the next meeting I went to, I got a temporary sponsor, and I went out and I did the first 3 steps with him within 10 days of being sober. And then I went to a men's meeting. It was a men's stag beginners meeting, it was a dark room in an Alano club, and there was this guy there with in a black leather jacket and black clothes, and it's the middle of summer, and it's a dark room, and there's this dark foreigner there, and there are people that are sharing, and he's laughing at him and pissing people off, and and then he turns his attention to me at the end of the meeting, and he's asking me, "Why are you here, kid?" He's like, "Well, and I'm like, "Because I drink and things get messed up," and then he's like, "Well, why don't you try some controlled drinking?" And I tell him a little bit more about my drinking. I'm like, I'm the kind of guy that buys a keg and we go out to the valley, and I end up with all beat up, my truck's messed up, all my friends left me and no more beer, and I spent the money to put the whole thing on. And he's like, "Yeah, you're hopeless." And I was like, I wasn't the support that I was looking for here. But I was beat down so bad, and I didn't want what I had anymore. I wanted something else, and so I followed him around, and he asked me to go out fishing with him, and so I showed up out in Bristol Bay, worried about my warrants and flying on the planes and all that, those things that come up, to try to stop you from getting well. And I went out there, and there's Runar smiling when I showed up. And it had been so long in my life since someone had been happy to see me somewhere. And I got to work on that boat, and we talked. He's like, "You can't complain, no bitching, no whining," and that's what I did. And we talked about spirituality, we talked about God, we talked about all kinds of things that got me fired up about life. We talked about men's meetings. We talked a lot about men's meetings, and he got me stoked about this idea of a men's meeting. And I don't want to be a pussy up here and cry. I got excited about this whole idea about a spiritual experience and living a spiritual way of life, because I knew from being a little kid I always wanted this. I always wanted to have a deep-rooted kind of spiritual life, but I never knew how to get it, and I was always so just unable to live with life. But I wanted to be connected. I wanted to be whole, and I didn't know how to do that though. And then I got this book, and it gave me simple directions on how to do that for a person that, like me, that has a spiritual malady. I'm not right. I'm not comfortable with myself. And I have a physical allergy to alcohol that when I put it in, it makes me feel awesome. And then I want more. And I can't, and then my mind, when I'm not drinking, I can't stop wanting to drink. And with all these things combined, it's a lethal combination for me. I can't beat it by myself. And so I get this opportunity to, sure, I'm powerless over alcohol. The police prove that time and time again. The guys kicking my ass prove that time and time again. I proved it kicking my ass time and time again. I'd run into walls. I was my own worst enemy. And then I get this solution. So I do I'd already done the first 3 steps. I said whatever kind of higher power is out there, sure, I'll accept that. And out there on the boat, I got times to kind of develop my own understanding of it. I mean, I didn't even understand it anymore. I just got, I guess, more to believe in it and more to make that decision, that this is the decision that I make to change my life from here on out. I'm not just going to not drink today. I mean, I had to tell myself that, the first few days. But once I had 2 weeks, which was longer than I'd ever been sober not by myself, but, just sober in my life without people putting me in a room, without alcohol. I mean, I was sober out in the world. And, there's the captain's drinking booze, and, there's alcohol in the boat with me. And I'm not freaking out wanting to go drink it. Because before, the night I quit drinking, I tried to give my dad a fifth of booze to say, hey, Dad, hide this from me. I stole booze from that man my whole freaking life. And I'm trying to tell him to hide it from me. And, I'm like, how does this going to, I was like, he couldn't do a good enough job when he wanted to keep it for himself. I was like, he's not good, He leaves it out on the table. And I'm just like, I'm there by myself. I'm powerless over it. I wanted to drink 3 beers, and I was finishing off this fifth, and I didn't know why, and I didn't know how, and it overwhelmed me. So, I said by myself, I can't figure this out. And then I get into the steps, and then, so I've done the first 3, and I get a different sponsor for whatever reason, and he makes me wait a while to do the steps. Maybe I'm 6 months sober, and I finally get around to do the 4th step, which is way too long if you ask me. I was crazy for too long. It's just, I'd recommend doing that as fast as possible and not having to wait around with it. Because I remember the uncomfortability of having to write all that stuff out and then knowing what it is and not, being able to just sitting on it. I mean, it's the only thing that's ever gotten me closer to God is to empty out all that stuff that I got. I mean, Runard said on the boat time and time again, you can get well regardless of anyone, provided you clean house and trust God. And that's what I needed to do next. And so I looked at all the things that all the people had done to me and all my resentments, and I seen, where I had been at fault in my part. And we worked those out. I did it out of the book, and, I got to tell somebody, and I didn't really know if I trusted him or not, but I was like, I don't really know who this punk dude is, but I'm gonna do this. And if it comes back, it probably isn't going to be worse than what I've already been through, because I already had to live through that stuff once, and people knowing about it isn't that bad, because they knew about it in the beginning. So I did the 5th step, and then I wasn't sure that I did it right the first time, so I did it again with another guy, and I started getting a little more relief, and then I did the 6th and the 7, and I spent more time on my 7, trying just to make sure that I didn't want to skimp on this, because it talks about, we're building this archway that we're going to walk through, a free person, free from this life that I wanted to end. And I didn't want to have a wimpy little arch. I wanted to have something that was solid and that I could get through, and it was going to be good. I didn't want that some kind of a half program, because I seen it around. I mean, I seen a lot of sick people in AA still, and they weren't getting well. And I seen this guy, and I'm getting 30, 60, 90 days, and I see this guy, and he's keep on calling himself a newcomer, and I'm like, fuck that. I mean, it was not for me to come back in time and time again. I mean, I knew that when I came in here, I made a decision for my life. I mean, it wasn't just I'll go check out what AA is doing today. I mean, it was just so bad, and when I needed a power, I needed a miracle. I wasn't gonna just be going back and forth with that. So I did the 7th step, and I'm like, these things that I do that make people mad, that hurt people, the people that I love particularly, I asked for them to be taken away, and. I think most of them had. Sometimes my fear crops up, but I asked. I spent the time, and I did that. I said, please, remove these things. And then came making this other list of all the people that I'd harmed, and I took it from the inventory I made, and I made it bigger, and added a lot of financial amends, I had a box of rubber checks, and I used every single one of them, and they keep track of them. They got your name on them, and I almost made halfway through those in 2 years, and it was about $4,000 or so far, and I got about 4,000 more to go, and I made some headway, and it's all I can really hope for to do. I mean, I drank for 4 or 5 years, so I hope that in 4 or 5 years I'll have that repaid. I got to, and by this time I'm about almost a year sober, maybe a little over a year, depending on which one of the amends I'm making. And my father, in this time, he's an active alcoholic. We used to drink together every day, and I had a lot of resentments against that man from the beginning to the end. And I'd accepted, that he was probably going to die drunk, and then he got to treatment, and he got sober, or recovery I invited him to my men's meeting, and we clapped him off at the end. So I wasn't sure how that was going to go, but he's working the 12 steps, and I had this 9th step to do to him, because I did a lot of bad things to that man. I did a lot of things that sons shouldn't do, no matter what their fathers do, and so I had to go and clean up my side of the street. Because like I said, I made a decision to get a new life. I didn't want to change my old one and upgrade it a little bit. I just wanted to scrap it and start over. And I talked to him. I asked him. I told all the things that I thought that I did wrong. I asked him what I needed to do to make it right, and he was able. He had done his 9th step too, so we got to kind of exchange 9 steps at the same time. And my life kept on getting better. I was able to apologize to my mom and repair the relationship that I had with her. I was actually able to even live with her for a little bit, and she didn't trust me before, and I was slowly able to regain her trust, and kind of be a good person, just making living amends, just not calling up in the middle of the night drunk, screaming at my parents for being bad parents, and not making any more wreckage. I got to kind of clean up, all these things I felt bad about that made me less the person that I didn't want to be. And the relief that I felt from doing those was lifting the weight off my shoulders that I just didn't even understand, and my life was getting better in all kinds of ways. I got a job at a school that I probably, I almost went into if I didn't get institutionalized. And I have this 7 pages of criminal record that, I'm walking in with to go apply for this job, and I just know they're going to turn me down. And yet they're calling up on the phone. They're like, we just need a letter with your record to let you, it gets hired, we'll start you on payroll. And, I'm all full of fear, and they're just calling me up. They're just, come on, just a letter, just explain a few words, just write it down. And after like 2 weeks, I'm just dragging my heels because I'm just full of fear, and I write this letter, and they're like, okay, start Monday. And I was just like, and there I am working with little kids, like kindergarten through 12th grade, and the 12th grade ones are, they're just like me, and I can relate to a lot of them. I know a lot of them are alcoholics, and I kind of talk about that. I mean, just talk about whatever they wanted to talk about, and I'm working with these kids, and I just get to go in and play basketball with them a lot of times, and and I'm like, when does work start? Out there on the basketball court running around, and life had gotten. It was getting manageable. I was doing these things, and it was changing, and I didn't have fears as much anymore. I was starting to see these promises. The 11th step, prayer and meditation. Every morning I try to turn my will and my life over and ask for guidance. Being here has been awesome. I'm kind of like 8 hours difference from Alaska, so I get up earlier. I don't know what the deal is. We got 24 hours of daylight there too, but it's just, I don't know, it seems more powerful here or something. And so I've been able to get up early in the mornings and just kind of pray and meditate and find my conscious contact, which is pretty easy when you're around so many people that are in recovery. I didn't understand why my sponsor told me to come here at the beginning. I didn't understand why he said you had to come back in 2 months if you stay longer. Then he set me up totally. I mean, to see how strong what I got to do to carry this message and see how it's being done over here. It's just phenomenal to see so many young people in recovery. Where I'm from, it's not the same. There's little pockets of enthusiasm in my home group, but I came here and I was greeted and I've been welcomed, and it's been something else. God has entered my life, and like the book talks about, it says that he's going to be my principal and I'm going to be his agent. So I'm representing this higher power, the spirit of the universe, and as my duty or responsibility or actual privilege, I get to show, like the third step says, take away my difficulties, let victory over them, bear witness to those, I would help with thy love, thy power, and the way of life. And that's a lot. Take away my difficulties. I had a lot of them. I could complain for hours about them, and just to go on and on and on about all of them. And some were little, and some were big, and some were outside issues, and some were alcoholism. But majority of them, all of them, when I'm in God's light, are taken away. And I get to be that. I get to be that experience that God can do so much for someone. And I don't like to talk a whole lot about all my drinking and drugging I did, but people see me now and they meet me now, and I start to tell them about the times that I was doing Oxycontins, and I was shooting up, and I decided, since I'd already shot up, that I should maybe try heroin because I needed to compare the two. And there's the logic in that. So regular people don't understand. And the guy that I was picking this girl up from, he's like, "Why are you doing this?" And I was like, "It doesn't make sense to you. It makes great sense to me." And it's just all these things that I do in life that were killing me, but I didn't really see it because they made sense, because I had this dis-ease. I was disconnected from any kind of balancing point. Some days I'd be happy and off the walls, and then other days I'd be depressed, and I couldn't find any kind of medium, and I'd always try to make it work with alcohol, but then I'd punch holes in the walls and steal money from my dad, and get in a fight with my girlfriend, and all I wanted was to kind of have some kind of regular life, and no clue as to how to do it. And by coming to, I wasn't sure that AA was going to be able to solve all these problems. I was like, I knew drinking, in these 5 years, I'm like, okay, so where's drinking? I need to solve this, I need to solve that, but this drinking thing, I kind of want to hold on to that, because that's like it's the only thing that really helps me deal with all this, all this reality. If it wasn't like it was, maybe I could not drink. I didn't understand that, that this whole disease and how it pretty much entraps me into, if I don't find a spiritual experience, a spiritual awakening, a spiritual way of life, that I'm going to die miserable, alone, in jail, just a life that, it's a cruel sentence to have no answer to. And so I trudge this road, and I go looking for new guys. I go to treatment centers. I go to McLaughlin, where I was institutionalized at, and I see staff members that are used to lock the door and say goodnight, and now they see me come back there, and I get to try to carry the message at the youth center there, and I got approved as a certified volunteer. When I called them up at 6 months, and they're like, hell no. And I called them up at, I was like, I'm just going to call you back again. I was like, and then I called them back at 9 months, and they're like, no. And I just got longer and longer in sobriety, and eventually they're like, okay, in 6 months, we'll give you a 6-month waiting period, and then you'll come back. I'll be like, all right, I'll be back from Europe then. And I had a little bit of resentment and ego. How could they turn me down? And, I'm carrying this message, and yet, I got to go in there, and I got to talk to a few of those kids. And really, it made me feel probably a lot better to walk out of that center without a guard, without a probation officer walking me out, because I was in there for a year. And so that feeling, that was just, God just was shining on me the whole time I was walking out of there. I mean, it was just phenomenal, because that was lame being in jail there, and it kind of reminds me of that guy that was in prison, and then he ended up being the warden of it. I mean, I was able to turn the table and be on the other side of it. I've lived the misery of it, and because I left that out. My first meeting was when I was institutionalized. The guy came in, and he said that when he was 16, he drank like this. He said that he went to the meetings, the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. He got sober, and I remember when this drug counselor, who I knew she was full of treatment, so I didn't really believe her, but I remember when she told me to go to AA, it just brought me back to this guy who told me that he got sober when he was 16. And I kind of remembered that all throughout my sobriety. And then one night I finally meet this guy on the year he has his 17 years, and I got to give him his coin for that, and because he carried the message to me. He planted that seed, when I was 14. I didn't even, I knew I was an alcoholic, but I just didn't have enough knowledge or something. I guess I wasn't satisfied with the misery or something, and so I got a little more, and yet he carried the message, and he'd gone in there, and for me to be able to maybe do that, do what he did, to at least to when I was at that broken point, then I was at that little kind of that low where you can break through all the defenses that we make for ourselves and all the confusion that we make for other people when they're trying to help us. I'd go to counselors and psychotherapists and psychologists, and I'd love talking with them, and they'd want to fill me full of drugs, or I'd hate talking to them, and I'd just cry the whole session and feel like worse at the end of it, and just embarrassed that I even went in to do it, because my life was so bad. And they'd be like, well, you want to try to get a job? And I was like, they had no idea how deep these things were. A job wasn't going to fix what the pistol that I wanted to put in my mouth. It wasn't a financial insecurity that my life was. It was such a spiritual bottom that I needed a miracle, like my sponsor says. He goes around now and he asks people, do you feel like you need a miracle? And when they say yes, it's kind of cool. And now I've been around for 2 years now in my home group, and I get to see guys who used to come in and they used to just to talk. It's just to talk, and I wouldn't hear a word they said because they weren't saying anything. They're just talking, and then suddenly it changes what they're saying. And they're talking about, what's really awesome when you get in here is when you get in here and you see a guy that was hurting, and you see him do something, and then you see him wake up and you see him get a spiritual experience. And when he's saying that, he's talking about some other dude he's seen, but I'm seeing it in him. And that must mean that, somebody might have seen it in me, because, that's how it says in the book, that's how we notice it. We notice other people's lives are taken off. And we're going to notice other people are going to notice in us before we do. And it was, it's just these gifts that keep on being given through the fellowship. I thought that, because drinking did a beautiful thing for me, chemically in my mind. I got relief. I could take a drink and all the tension in my back, they would just go away. That hours of yoga barely touches. And so I needed like a sufficient substitute. And I needed a place to where my life I wouldn't be, it says in the book, just a stupid, boring, and glum. And coming here to Iceland, I know you guys are got a lot going on here. It's not about being righteous. I see some people back in home in AA that are trying to be righteous on me, and I just can't really have any of that. I don't come here to be it says again in the original manuscript, no access to grind, no people to please, no lectures to be endured, and that's the methods we find most effective. And so I come in here and I love having a fun time in AA. I like going out. I love bringing new guys with me and just going and doing different things after the meetings. I always try to show up to the meetings early. Bring new guys if I can, if they are looking for a ride. going to the treatment centers and picking them up. Just anything I can do to make my experience in Alcoholics Anonymous more fun and add to the experience that someone else is going to have. Because it's awesome to see, a kid to get out of treatment, and when I had no place to go and no one to turn to, no one to talk to, at least he has a chance. He might not stay sober, but at least I made it the effort, and I enjoy me doing so. I think it's Bill's writing on Tradition 5. It's self-preservation, duty, and love that fuel my life now. And at times I slip out of that, and I start getting back into self and my ego and all that. But then I get pulled right back into it, and I go to my meeting and I see my friend have a spiritual experience, and it's just awesome when I stick around long enough to see a guy that's just he's not around for 6 months, and then something happens at 8, and then he's still there at 10, and then he's getting his year chip, and it's like how did that happen? I mean, did I really stay around this whole time and participate in this whole thing? Because I never finished anything before, and I never could finish school, finish nothing. I mean, finish the booze and everything, but I mean, I never maintained the commitments I had, and I was, they made me secretary of the men's meeting there in Anchorage, and they say you're supposed to be there for 6 months, and somehow I hung on for 8, and I got to kind of be a centerpiece of something, and talk to people about it, and be involved in it, and be a part of something, not the head, not the tail, just in the middle of it. And when you hear good things about that meeting, someone you'd invite to and say, hey, I've heard good things about that meeting, and it's like that's when I go in there, I know that's where I belong. I mean, that's my home group. It's a spiritual place. I mean, it's a sacred place for me to go to, a haven. I mean, I get all twisted out of shape at any day of the week, and I go in there, and I sit down, and there's someone I know, and they're talking about this program, about getting a spiritual experience that changes them from being a messed up person that can't stop putting chemicals in their body to someone that's focused on passing on a message of hope. Because for a long time, I didn't have any hope, and there was nobody I could go to that could give it to me, that could transmit it. And somehow, these alcoholics were able to uniquely touch me in a way that other people can't. I mean, I have other mentors, but the intimacy that alcoholics have of knowing this, willing to go so far down just for a little bit of pleasure and relief from a substance. I mean, some people understand that and some people don't. But the ones that do, the ones that understand what I'm talking about, when they're talking about, you drink Listerine, and I'm like, no, but I've inhaled hairspray, and he's like, I talked to you for 3 minutes, and I know you're an alcoholic. And when I can fly halfway across the world, and meet person after person after person, and have this jive of these steps of this program, this fellowship, and not, I even picked up on which chapter it was, we read the same thing in my home group, more about alcoholism, I heard the cognac, and I was like, yeah, they're naming off different things I tried to do, so I'm going to drink $35 cognac when I'm on the streets. That'll keep me sober. I'll be better. I'll be the homeless, sophisticated drunk. It was all these different things I tried to do, and none of them, they all seemed to mess up somehow, despite my best intentions of trying to have a good life. And now, life is beyond good. I mean, this this program, and coming here and I get a stay in a guy's room. I don't know where he went, but he has all these speaker tapes on the computer, and and I'm just listening to one after another, and I listen to them when I'm sleeping, and I'm just AA by osmosis, and I wake up and he's talking about spiritual experience, and it's just so cool that to come to a place that's just so rich with this message. I know that I have a purpose in life now, and when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, I knew I belonged here. I knew I had the symptoms, but I didn't. It talks about the fellowship and it says it'll come, but for me, I wanted it now, and I wanted it that day, but it was it got built slowly. The home group I have, it was 6 guys at first, and then it was 55 this winter. So I mean, it's happening. It's there, and all I got to do is show up and see where I can add to, and put my hand out to the new guy that's just as hopeless as I was, and just as broken, and just as scared, and he doesn't know if he wants to quit drinking. He doesn't know if he's an alcoholic. He just he was just like me. For 6 months, I'd say, I don't know. No matter what you asked me, no matter what it was. I mean, all I could utter was, I don't know. I was taking, handfuls of antipsychotics and blacking out for 20 hours a day and sleeping for the other, just trying to not even be in reality. And I see guys come in, with that scaredness in them. And, I know what it's been like. I mean, and when I start talking about it to them, they can... they're like, man, this dude, he's been there. That and only us alcoholics seem to understand that loneliness of when we really get down there and when we really get lonely, and there's no one else because we're so distant from God. I mean, that's what really makes us so alone, is just being so far from God, and we try to depend on people. I mean, and then somehow you get God. And then I'm not alone anymore, no matter where I go, and I don't have to be always talking about myself. I don't have to be always, doing anything. I can just be. And for me, finding peace in any moment, or even a few moments put together, is what I always wanted in life. And it's by coming and working this program of Alcoholics Anonymous that I got that. And I thought that it was going to be different things. My mind here, my big voice, it always tells me that it's going to be this over here, and it's going to be that brand over there. You'll find it in that church over there. And then my sponsor will tell me, why don't you stop and meditate for 15 minutes and see where you're at? Because the only time that you're going to find God is now. There's never going to be a better time for you to get connected to God than right now. And that's something that all these other people were having a hard time telling me of. And I call him up, and sometimes he doesn't say it so nicely as I want him to, because he says, meditate for 15 minutes and don't call me back. and I just like, okay, I called him too many times today, because I like to speed down on my phone, and I'll pick it up and I'll start in the middle of a thought to someone in AA. And they're like, you have some time sober. You shouldn't be, you should think about what you say before you just start yapping away to somebody that you don't know where they're at. And, I still got a few little things I gotta work on. But this is like icing on the cake. It's like, do I want just to have? I already got the life that's second to none, but how much better do I want to make it? How much more do I want to put in? How many more people do I want to try to help with this? And by coming here, I can't even explain how much just seeing people here and being invited to things like this, and seeing so many people just coming to a speakers meeting like this. I'm going to have something to talk about when I go home to all these people in my home group. And I'm going to have a really strong message of hope to share, that people here have embraced AA and embraced the message that the text talks about, that not everybody does. That I go places and I hear people that don't have God, and I feel sorry for them. I feel because I'm pretty sure they're afraid, because I know that without God in my life, I'm paralyzed with fear. I couldn't have probably gotten on a plane and left, my whole life in Alaska that I've never left before. I could have never done that. Even if I was drinking, I couldn't even leave my basement. I had a hard time going to get, alcohol from the store, much less socks from, I couldn't even buy clothes. I was just, how could I go out and spend time in public? And I was just so uncomfortable with any of it. And now I frolic around the country and the world and go to different AA meetings. And I start trying to complain to my sponsor, and he's like, you write papers and people pay you to go to school. He's like, your life's good, stop bitching. and I have to sit back, and when he puts it like that, and I'm like, yeah, I do got it pretty good, when I'm not in myself. And then I talk to the new guy who's with us and who's trying to figure this deal out, and I try to lead him to God, as he can understand him. And I try all the different understandings that I've learned about to try to convey that. And I just hope that he picks up on his own, and I try to just to carry this message. And if they go out, they go out. One kid, he's my age, and he keeps on coming in and out. And I wish I could. I wish he would stay. But I know that I can't protect him from alcohol. I know I can't protect him from this disease. I can try to be a part of the fellowship and introduce him to this message and be an example of this. And that's not such a bad deal. I love seeing people get sober, and I love seeing the spiritual experience, but I also like seeing guys come in new and they're hopeless and they're all messed up, and I just get to try to talk to them, because it's a lot of fun being able to just see somebody that doesn't even know what they want, kind of start to figure it out, and then they're able to take that and give it away to someone else. And I couldn't have figured this thing out if I wrote it myself. It's a good deal. I can't. I want to give this thing away, because if I was selfish enough to keep this to myself, I know I'm self-centered, but the gifts that I got here, I didn't really deserve. The life, I always thought I wanted to have a good life and to please people, but I didn't ever really put in the work to do it. And now, just by showing up to meetings, by doing these 12 steps, time and time again, I'm in a different country. I never had a passport before, and I never got to live life on kind of like the wings of God, I guess, because I'm not doing this myself. I'm just being a part of it. And I thank you enough for letting me come here and talk for a while about the 12 Steps of Alcoholics Anonymous and the program. I think you guys have vastly more than a sufficient substitute here. I'm glad to see this fellowship in this club. I've heard a lot about it. Thanks.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Sobercast is ad-free, and we'd like your help in order to keep it that way. So if you'd like to help us be self-supporting by pledging $1 or $2 a month, visit Sobercast.com and look for the donate links. Thank you very much.